God has run that school. It's nice now because I've got students that are willing to pay a lot more money or to put some skin in the game by getting a loan at least. And so not everybody does. It's 25%. Hey, how's it going? Good. Good to see you guys. Hey. Thought I got rid of you, man. Good to see you. So anyway, so that's what we're doing there, man. And we just last week, was the last week we had a big contest? Or a week before? I guess this week before we have a big old 4-man team horseshoe contest. And this year, Flatland Forge team that was sponsored by Jim Captain Import did really good, man. They came in fourth. And they were right there. They could have been in the money if they had a little bit better horse, I think, one day. So it was real proud. So anyway, part and parcel of what we do in the school, and what I think farriers do every day, and what we've got to understand a lot about is the anatomy, the functional anatomy of this thing that we're dealing with. You know, we're trimming its foot. We're putting shoes on. You know, it's not just simple diamond Bronco shoes anymore. You know, we've got all kinds of shoes, wide whip shoes, narrow whip shoes, and aluminum shoes, and shoes with mechanics in them, and extensions, and you know, now we've got asymmetrical shoes and all kinds of stuff. And today, this clinic is sponsored by a shoe that I really like. It's one of the few shoes that's come down the pike in a while. Good morning, Mr. Bragg. Good morning. Good. It's one of the few shoes that's come down the pike in the last few years that really makes sense to me. You know, I like making shoes. I think that shoe making is an important aspect of training farriery. It doesn't seem to be very realistic nowadays to hand make shoes. I don't know if you guys that do it, but realistically, come on, we don't make shoes all when we shoe horses. We've got to get through them. We've got to make money. So the Razor shoe, the guys that are sponsoring this, is a shoe that I've brought into my curriculum, and I like it because here's my thought pattern. That when we look into this hoof capsule, you know, we've got a guy named Shane Carter told me one time that this capsule here is a vessel of a certain volume. Once it's mature, it doesn't change in volume, and it can change in shape. You know, like a water balloon, we can take a water balloon and put a quart of water into it and squish it into this shape or squish it into this shape. And that's kind of what the hoof capsule has the ability to do. But if you look at this, one of the things, you guys, that I think is really important too, is there any barefoot hippies in here? Good. Not that that's all bad. You guys do me for that. I'm a little politically correct sometimes, but it's all good fun, so I hope I don't offend. It's like my first experience in Kentucky. You guys might appreciate this. I used to water ski a lot, and so we were water skiing, went to a little boaters campground, and it's getting dark. It's about, you know, it's July, about 8:30 at night, getting dusk, right? And then we're in this little bay, right? And it may be 30 yards across, something like that. Just so enough that I could see there was a man and a woman over there fishing. That was about it. We pull our little boat up, we get out, and me and my buddy, we're hauling stuff to the girls in the camp, and so I had to pee. We've been drinking beer, you know, pulling the boat to the lake, right? So I had to pee, so I went up there and went in the forest, and just happened to stand up on a little knoll, and it was either early summer or late summer, I can't remember, but there was not a lot of leaves on the trees, and he could see the silhouette it had to have been 40, 50 yards away, at least, the silhouette of this man in the stance of having food, right? It took this guy 20 minutes to walk around. And he come up to me, and he was so mad. I didn't know if he's going to whoop my ass then or not. And I'm like, whoa, partner. Well, I didn't need to. First of all, I apologize to your wife. I had no idea. But it's not like you didn't really see anything, but it was just the idea. So that was my first introduction to Kentucky. Be careful where you pee. So we're talking about this capsule. So what I'm saying is that one of the things that's happened in our industry is we have a lot of barefooters and a lot of natural balance people, and a lot of natural hoof care practitioners, and a lot of veterinarians in the room. No veterinarians are now in Lexington right now. We've got an issue with a lot of podiatrists. You know, quite frankly, you guys, I don't think that a veterinarian can be an expert shooter and an expert vet at the same time. I think you got to pick one or the other. And I'm a big proponent of letting us do the Farrier work and work hand in hand with you. You do your work and let me do my work. But when you start shoeing horses and start putting steel on the bottom of this, which is a very non-rigid, you know, thing, man, this thing doesn't move. This one doesn't move from day 1 to day 45 or day 50 or whenever. But this constantly moves. It moves this way. It moves this way. The sole, it's very dynamic. And that's the key from a good farrier to be able to take this rigid structure and maybe take this overgrown foot a little bit and get it shaped correctly, get it trimmed correctly, trimmed to the right length, trimmed to the right solar planes, trimmed to the right shape so that we've got a nice even distance around the margin of the coffin bone around so the forces are equally distributed. But then when we put a rigid plate on that, it changes things up, as we know. So that's one of the important things that we do, is marry those up in a way that doesn't interfere too much with that and has way more good than negative, right? So in doing that, I've had the opportunity since out of school. We talk a lot about the functioning of the foot, how to maintain it, and the differences in types of feet. You know, an upright foot, for example, real upright foot won't have a lot of depth of foot in the front half of the foot. The bone is in there at such an it's got massive amounts of depth in the back half of the foot, right? And so there's differences between upright feet and underslung feet, and you know, different types of normal feet. So and how they react and how they respond. This foot here, when he gets trimmed down, his heels get trimmed down where he needs to be. He's going to expand and contract when he loads his foot, because as he loads this foot, this short pastern bone here, right, which is wide, goes in between the ungular cartilages and it widens out the foot, and so it tends to widen the foot. Well, if your heels are really long and really dry and really stacked, it wants to move it, but it can't. It doesn't move much. There's not much opening and closing there, right? Whatever, nonetheless, there is a normal, let's call it a physiological movement, or let's call it short-term deformation. Does that make sense? The foot deforms under load, and it depends. If he's barrel racing, it's going to deform differently than when he's in my little loading press and it's a dead foot, right? But we can make certain conclusions by looking at dead foot and putting them in loading presses, only because this thing from the knee and the hock down is fairly automatic, right? There's very little muscle control of the distal limb, and so it's fairly automatic and fairly predictable. So there are certain things that we can do and look at with dead feet, right? But what I'm saying is that nowadays in this natural foot care, they've got all these, you know, the people that say that, well, we've got this natural three-dimensional movement in the working of the foot, and it's important that we don't, you know, affect that, because if we do, according to Strasser, that we put shoes on it, we're going to kill the foot. We kill the coffin bone, and the foot will slowly die. And I've heard her say that. And she's wrote a flow chart out to where when you start putting, this is Dr. Hiltrud Strasser. Anybody heard of her? Oh, yeah. She is the grandmother of equine foot hippydom. So she has a flow chart that she says when you take a foot and you put shoes on it, both the vibrations and the steel, which don't match the vibrations in our cells, right? You guys know that we have certain oscillation vibrations in each cell? I didn't know that, but we do, I guess. And the metal interferes with that. The metal interferes with the normal functioning of the foot. The steel shoe doesn't allow the foot to flex and function in a three-dimensional manner. And what happens is, because she observes that feet that don't have shoes have wider heels, and when we shoe them, their heels tighten up a bit, that we're killing the foot. And she's got a flow chart that says that shoes cause kidney failure and will kill your horse. Now listen, when you've got a bunch of women who've got expensive horses, whether they be hunters or jumpers or whatever they are, and they're sitting in the crowd listening to a veterinarian tell them that, that's not fair fighting, boys. That's a little bit, I call BS on that. Now, so here's what I think. And this is through looking at feet and loading feet and reading articles and talking to people all over. There needs to be a certain amount of vertical movement here, right? A certain amount of this, a certain amount of this. But look, there's only a certain amount. We've got this elastic and dynamic hoof capsule. We've got the bone that is not very elastic and dynamic. A little bit, but not very. And then we've got the bone attached to the hoof wall through this series of sensitive and insensitive lamina, right? The laminar bed. And we know, I don't know if you know it or not, but I've taken feet, put them in my little loading press, and just drill a little Dremel hole there. Don't destroy anything. Just Dremel a little narrow little hole there, and put a little pin, or a little number 6 finish nail or something, right? And load it, and see how much that moves. And you'd be surprised how much it moves. It moves every bit of 1/8 of an inch. The weird thing is, when you take 2 of them, and I put longer pieces out, when that foot moves, those pieces go like that. You know what I mean? Those 2 coming out the bone, they don't go like that. They go like this somehow, because the bone doesn't just come straight down, it moves in there. Point is that there's a certain amount of physiological movement that the bone has inside the capsule. Both this way, right, and this way. Normal, it's soft tissue attachment. That makes sense to me. Does that make sense to you guys? There's a certain amount of twisting. I mean, I think that Ian will probably tell you, Ian McKinley, she's a whole bunch of racehorses, man, and sees a lot more problems than I do, and he's an expert on fixing them, but I'm sure he'll tell you that horses get what we'll call chorial pain, or sometimes just pain in the lamina. They're just sore here. You tap your hammer on their hoof capsule, they're just sore, right? And especially more in horses that race in dry country than in wet country. So there's a certain amount of what I'm going to call normal and natural physiological movement, right? That being said, I think there's a limit. You know, the term physiological limit means a physiological limit. It means that if I'm drinking a glass of red wine a night, that's physiologically healthy for me. If I'm drinking a bottle or 2 of red wine a night, that's opposite of that, right? You know, young horses, when they're grown up, we know that the hoof plates, they can, if they're overloaded and asymmetrically loaded, we know that plate that's loaded more grows more, stimulates it, and has an auto-correction ability to a certain point. But when we have an angular deformity that just overloads that, then it crashes, right? So there's a certain limit that the growth plate stimulates and grows faster on that side and fixes itself. And there's a certain limit when we've got too much force over too much time that the growth plate crashes, and then we have big problems. And so my point is that there's a physiological limitation to the movement of the foot, and if we don't restrict it somehow, if we don't strap some boots on with some shank and give us some support, we can't work all day hard. I mean, I tried, because I used to shoe horse in tennis shoes, and I can't do it no more. My feet hurt, and I need some boots, man. I need some lace-up boots, and my feet are a lot better at the end of the day. And the way I explain it is, think of what it would be like to go out and build fence all day with tennis shoes or moccasins, as opposed to building fence all day, in proper work boots, and think how your feet would feel. So I'm a big believer in static or rigid support on the bottom of the foot. Although there is movement, and this is what the razor of my point here is, the razor shoes give us that same physiological movement. So I was in Sweden last year, talked to the owner of the company, developer of the shoe. He doesn't speak good English, especially after a half bottle of vodka. and I'm trying to pick up on it. The only way I can keep him talking is keep buying him drinks, right? I'm wanting to get something out of this. But after a while, I'm like, well, that didn't work out so good. So anyway, he told me that no, this shoe's different. It's not like our synthetic shoes, right? It's not like a lot of the synthetic shoes that just unrestricted and let this movement happen unrestricted. It only allows about 3 millimeters of movement this way and about 3 millimeters of movement this way. And he explained this to me, that it's by design, that he worked a lot on the steel to get this certain amount of flexibility, but not go past that. So that's one of the things that I like about this Razor shoe. Is that pretty close?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea.
Yeah. So we do get rigid support, rigid steel support, but we also get a little bit of movement and flexibility as well. So to me, that's a good. I like that idea. So. Anyway, so I thought we'd, first thing I'm going to do is kind of, if I can take this guy out of here, I'm going to show you guys, while I'm skinning out this leg, I'm going to just pass this around. Is there anything that you guys want to see from an anatomy standpoint today? I mean, we got some front legs, we got hind legs, you know, we've got a bunch of stuff that we can get through. Is there anything in particular you guys want to see in the foot, or tendons, or ligaments, or anything like that?
Like what you were saying a while ago about that foot expanding. What I don't like about putting quarter clips up on the front like they do, you're inhibiting the amount of movement that foot's got. And when that 1,000-pound horse hits the ground, something's got to move. And I don't, unless it's a reason for it, I don't see the point in putting quarter clips on everything.
Okay, I happen to agree. You know, there's times that but I don't know what the country is like here. Is this what you call dry country?
Yeah.
This is
Well,
what you call
This year?
Not after 2
years
months,
wasn't
and then you're
less.
shooting in the rainforest
Yeah.
for the next 3 months.
Oh, so you got all kinds of issues.
It goes up and down, but I can see quarter clips in the back, but on the front with all that weight, and I blame it on the hunter jumper people. They're the first ones to come out and start doing all this, and I don't, of course, you do what the customer wants,
Yeah.
but sometimes the customer ain't always right.
You got that right. You got that right. I mean, how often do we go to our doctor or to our dentist or to our architect or whatever engineers that design our house and say, oh, no, I want, when you do that surgery on me, I want you to use number 500 cat
Yeah.
silk with that other needle. She's like, why don't you just lay there and go to sleep?
I'll tell you what's going on.
Yeah, because they're trained.
Yeah.
One of my points, you guys, is that if we don't step our game up and show the general public and show veterinarians and show bear clearers that we're professional and we know we're professional foot care, then they're going to continue to you know, peck away at our trade. And those of you coming to a continuing education event like this, you know, get on you. You guys aren't part of the problem. You're part of the solution. You know.
You can take a horse
Here's that sole I pulled off.
that's fresh trim, put it on a piece of paper and stand it, trace it. Then pick it up, take that paper, and the trace line will be in underneath that trace line. You can see how much movement.
Yeah.
And it's hard to let people understand that. That's the reason, you know, like I say, I'm not much on them quarter clips.
Well, you know, it's a little bit different. Now, if one of the interesting things, has any of you guys ever gone and worked in a completely different environment? Have gone from like a wet environment into a dry environment, shoe horses?
Yeah.
What have you found out?
Yeah, dry environment, the feet will be obviously harder, but more stood up, and don't have near as much flexibility.
And what about lameness?
I have more trouble in the wet than I do the dry.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
So I come from the mountains of Colorado. You know, 30 years ago, go to Lexington, Kentucky. Had no idea what it was like. And we get more rain in 1 month than they'll get in 2 years up there in that country, right? That's high mountain desert, hard feet. I see more stuff in one summer in Lexington than I'll see in 5 years back home, as far as foot problems, right? And when feet are dry, they kind of grow more up like that. When feet are wet, they grow like that. So there's a book called The Foot of the Horse by a guy named David Roberge. If you guys ever read it, good book. And the AFA Journal, where are you at, Jeremy? Jeremy, they'll have that. It's a little paperback book. Ask Jeremy about it. It's a great book. He talks about the difference between length and depth. And I like that. Do you guys all have a delineation between length and depth of feet? What I'm talking about is the depth of a foot is the amount of depth there is, or distance between the coffin bone and the ground, combined with a thick sole and concave sole. Length of foot is more the distance between where the margin of the coffin bone is in the foot and where that foot flares to. So length is more flaring, depth is more, up and down. And so horses that are in dry country, they grow a little more depth, grow a little bit, their heels get kind of, stacked up a little bit. Horses in wet country flare out a little bit more. And I had a hard time dealing with wet feet when I got there. They were different. And one of the things that we use over there is quarter clips.
Yeah.
Because quarter clips help a wet-footed
Yeah.
horse for a while.
Well, I can see it
gathered
that
up. But then you gotta be careful, because after a while it starts wearing that, and I like burning my clips in. I'm not one for fitting with a lot of expansion and a lot of length in shoes, you guys. I don't like to fit a lot of expansion and a lot of length, so because I think there's a lot of leverage there. But yeah, I forgot what I was going to say. I wanted to, while I'm skinning out, to say this is about the best front leg. We've got the bottom row of carpal bone. I'm just going to go through this. One of the things they did is I quickly trimmed that foot, and I wanted to show you, if you guys sight that foot, you can see where the margin of the coffin bone is in that foot, because we popped the sole out. And I just want you to think about, how do you balance feet? What is your method of trimming and balancing feet? I think that we've got to do 4 things when we trim feet for shoes. We've got to reduce the depth to the proper depth, the proper length of the foot, right? We don't want too long, we don't want too short. We've got to get the solar planes with the medial lateral balance correct, and the dorsal palmar or dorsal plantar or toe to heel ratio, we've got to get that correct. And then the last part of the trim is the shape. Shaping that guy up into its ideal shape. Understanding that an upright boxy foot ain't never going to be a foot that's going to be wider than it is longer. Right? And a thoroughbred type foot on a thoroughbred horse ain't never going to be one of these West Texas tight little feet, is it? So don't try to make something out of something that's not. Just make it as strong as possible. If I've got an upright foot, and about, it seems like at least 10% of the thoroughbreds have a one upright type foot, when by the time they're 6 years or 6 months old, that's maybe something else. That's kind of an acquired thing. But down in Kentucky, we've got this outfit called Root and Riddle. Anybody ever heard of Root and Riddle? Root and Riddle's hey, boss, how you doing? So these guys have a lot of veterinarians there that are, and they have farriers working for them, and they've got a shoe that Dr. Morrison has developed. I don't know if Dr. Morrison developed, maybe Dr. Redden developed it years ago. It was probably developed back in the Stone Age, like most things we use that work. But anyway, so it's got a hinge there. You guys seen that hinge shoe? So they glue that on these babies, right? And then they'll pop that wire, and the shoe springs open because it's glued, right? So, and it says it widens heels on clip feet. So what do you guys think about that? Anybody ever been involved with that at all?
You can make the same shoe, but put a little bit of turnbuckle in the back.
Yeah.
And every day or two, you just turn it.
Turn it, yeah.
Just turn it a little bit, not much, quarter turn. Just.
What do you guys think about that idea, that general idea, though?
I was going to ask you about, because I'm looking at the journal here, the leg length. When they talk about an upright foot too, sometimes they're saying that's maybe a shorter foot or shorter leg.
Yeah.
So how do you take that into account?
Well, 80% of the human population has limb length disparity.
Right.
I mean, my left foot fits, when I put my boots on, my left foot always is tighter than my right. Right. So, and I'm sure it's the same here. It doesn't bother me. I think that it bothers humans usually more than it bothers the horses. I attack that as its own entity, its own limb, until it starts becoming a problem. Especially if it's a mature horse, right? But the point I'm trying to say is, if you take and try to open up that, you guys down with that? You guys down with it? Anybody want to see this anymore? So here's what I want you guys to do. I trimmed it, right? And I just want you to decide, I probably trimmed it high enough. I trimmed in my biceps, so I probably should trim a little more. But I want you to see the solar margin of this bone and relate that to the trim plane. And so I like to do that to kind of see where we're at. Here's my point though, what I'm talking about on this glue sheet. If we take this, hold that for me, and if we force this like this, remember we talked about the physiological limitations of feet, right? So that if I've got this big old horse, and I'm a natural balance person, and I want him to have flexibility. You know, he goes working them feet, man, and he starts doing this. Well, the lamina only have certain amount of range of motion, and a little bit of movement's good. A lot, I think, makes them sore, and I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of our racehorses get sore in the back half of their foot. Not only that, we may have a little bit of a lack of development back there. Now, coupled with the thoroughbred breed, coupled with wet feet soaking wet all the time, right? And I think that there's also a little bit of that too much movement back there, because we can see, you know, to anybody look, you guys all know, you take your aluminum shoes off, you see all the wear pattern, right, and deep wear pattern. So remember that those heels, back part of that foot, continue to wear and scrape across that sand. The little bitty ball bearings, or little bitty, very hard spell, especially if it's silica sand, keep wearing those heels, especially when he breaks over, right, and the toe doesn't wear. That's one of the reasons that we go lose degrees over a shoeing period. My point is that we have to understand that there's a certain amount of physiological movement, and when we take a shoe and rank it open like that, I think it stretches the lamina, and I don't know what it does permanently. Has anybody ever had young horses in these types of shoes? So we do it a lot down there, and I think that it's something that they do, and I think that most of the time they kind of go back. They kind of go back to their sin. My point is that we're given what we're given, right? And certainly we can influence it, but I think from a professional foot care person, we need to know where our limitations are. And I'm not going to make a perfect round thoroughbred foot out of this upright type foot. I need to make a strong upright foot. And if it starts becoming a problem, then we can, as farriers, we know mechanics of how to deal with it, right? For a racehorse, not an issue. Maybe an equitation type horse where he's judged on his squareness of gait, and if I've got a high-low situation, then maybe I might deal with that underslung and upright foot a little different, try to help the mechanics be squared, to kind of square his gait up a little bit. But certain disciplines, we don't really care about that. So,
Mitch, can you change the movement of the heels if you have ground support to the caudal area with a pad or something like that?
okay, now say that again, sir.
You have changed the movement of the heels with caudal support from the ground support, with a pad or something like that?
Yeah, I think so. I think we can influence that, personally. I don't know.
It helps the foot feel better.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's actually, looked at that and quantified that, but I think all of us will say that we, from just our experiences tell us that I think we can, for sure. Bill, how you doing? Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, man. So we've got a front leg here. Thought I'd take this guy apart because it shows the lacerocarpal bones. We've got a little injury here. Looks like a little something going on here. I used to live up in northeastern Montana, and when I got done with my apprenticeship in Southern California, I went up and lived with my cousin Walter for a while. And Walter had himself a little Piper Super Cub airplane,
that he learned to fly. He bought it from his neighbor, Henry Keats, who got to be 85 and couldn't fly anymore. And so Henry showed him how to fly. Walter just started flying. He never got a license. But we would go out, he'd put skis on the plane. In the wintertime, we would go out and hunt coyotes. So I'd sit in the back, and he would sit in front. I'd be the gunner. And we'd see, he'd put skis on the plane, and we'd find these coyotes out in the prairie, blast them. And at this time, this was like 76 or 77, something like that. We were getting $100 a pelt for them. So we got to be pretty good at skinning out legs in a hurry. Now this guy's got some injuries here. It looks like he's torn one of his annular ligaments, you know, and an annular leg. So we're going to have to get him kind of cleaned up a bit. You remember that an annular ligament is a small, non-structural ligament that that holds tendons and ligaments in place. Right? We've got them all over the leg. This one that looks like it's torn is called the flexor retinacula. I imagine we'll probably see some tendon injury here too. Hey Connie, is there any way that you could get me a rag and maybe I could clean this table up as we go?
What do you mean when you say non-structural?
Yeah, that'll work good, Connie. Okay.
Hey Dave, what do you mean when you say non-structural?
When I say non-structural, I mean that it doesn't hold the skeleton together like certain like collateral ligaments and suspensory ligament and the ligaments that hold the navicular bone in place, the impar ligament and those. So we've got some non-structural ligaments like a capsular ligament, for example. Capsular ligaments are. Can I use that for trash? Capsular ligaments are just ligaments that encapsulate a joint, right, and create synovial fluid. And so they don't have any structure to hold the skeleton together. That's what I mean. Where's my helper at? You ready? Are you okay with this? You want to, I don't even have any gloves. You all right?
Yes.
There you go. Which way you can take it? Take it? You remember mine?
Yes, I've got plenty of gloves in my truck. You want to go get some?
You want some gloves? You all right?
We'll watch him all play.
Keep your hands over.
Isn't it nice when everybody makes decisions for you? Before long, you won't have to be making, they don't make that decision for you, you make one yourself. All right then, so what we've got is, we've got a leg here. Let me just kind of go over real quick. Now, do you trust me? All right, I won't cut you. If I do, it won't be very I'm going to take this knee apart here. And we've got, now remember you guys that the horse's knee is a complex joint. It's made to, the way it's put together is to absorb a lot of shock. It does absorb a lot of shock. This is the bottom row of carpal bones right here. And so this is the accessory carpal bone right here. And it's hooked to this, let's see, this is the first and second. Oh no, sorry, this is the first and this is the second row of carpal bone, my bad. So this is the radial carpal bone, the intermediate carpal bone, and the ulnar carpal bone. And the ulnar carpal bone is what has the accessory carpal bone on the back of it. The accessory carpal bone doesn't bear much weight. You can just see it right here, that's the set joint right there. This hangs out back here, and it makes, tilt it over a little bit. There you go. See this carpal canal here, and that's where these deep flexor and superficial flexor tendons are coming through right there. See that? All right, so that's the carpal canal that's made up by this bone that's situated laterally on the knee, right? Called an accessory carpal bone. So it's, yeah, it's cool. So that's the deep flexor tendon, and this is the superficial flexor tendon. And it's going through the carpal canal. So
So I'm gonna go ahead and take this guy off. You good? You good? You wanna sit down? You sure? All right, you tell me if you wanna sit down, or if you need a dab, sweat or something. So I'm just cutting this top row of carpal bones. This is the, now remember, what sits on top of this is the radius, right? So the radius sits on top of that. The radius is fused, pretty much fused to the ulna in the horse, in quadrupeds. So unlike us, where we have the ability to pronate and supinate with two bones, right? Horse doesn't. So we're designed to swing in trees and peel bananas and make fire and chase mammoths over cliffs and stuff like that, where horses are designed to run away. And so, you know, they don't need that. And so they've increased their length of their bone, these distal bones, to help give a little bit more leverage. So that joint would be called the radiocarpal joint, and this is the intercarpal joint, and then this next row of carpal bones is called, and this would be the carpal metacarpal joint, because these three bones down here are the metacarpal bones. The third metacarpal, which is the cannon bone, which is this guy, and the fourth metacarpal, which is the lateral splint, and the third metacarpal, which is the medial splint, right? So it walks on that middle finger there. As far as, you know, anatomically. So I'm just going to cut through some of these ligaments and get this guy opened up a bit. Hopefully I won't cut my assistant here. If we do and you bleed to death, that's all right. We'll just make more kids. You got it? Can you guys see all right?
Sure.
No? Yeah, we've got all kinds of issues going on with this injury here. What are you talking about? Just all the blood and all the you know, the blood that's leaked out. Cutting through this really massive ligament in the back of this carpus.
Yep.
Where's going to be where the med tech comes all over? You're all right with that? You've been bloodier than this? Wow, when the last time? Were you hungry or something? Again, carpal canal there. Right, here's the accessory carpal bone here. Right there. And it can look like we've got some, definitely just doesn't feel good. This old joint doesn't feel good. So we've got some issues with this joint. And you can see, if you look at it real close, you can see there's all kinds of little chips and stuff going on here in the joint cartilage. So. All right, let's take this and turn around like that. Hold him like that. And I'm going to get these kind of nasty. It looks like these extensor tendons have torn as well. So we've got two, you know, on the distal end here, we've got two extensor tendons and two flexor tendons, and on the back of the leg. And the extensor tendons are really small, and they're not supported with check ligaments. Okay. So the interesting thing is that the front legs and hind legs, the extensor, you can see this front leg's got two separate extensor tendons, and this lateral extensor seems to be torn pretty good. So I'm going to take the main extensor down, kind of get him out of the way for now. And it is making a soft tissue attachment to the capsular ligament in the front of the fetlock.
Johnny. I'll try not to cut through the capsular ligament. Okay, so that's I got. I'm gonna just chop him off here, leave a little stump there. So that's the main extensor tendon. It's made a little bit of an insertion here on this capsular ligament. No one ever mentions that. But if we look at the capsular ligament, there you can feel there's a thickened pedicle there that this tendon attaches to a little bit. So there's some pull on it, right? But there's a lot of movement. Now, on the front of this guy, I'll try to get some of this fascia off here so we can see it better. These are the extensor branches of the suspensory ligament. Come around this way. Get this opened up a bit. So can you guys see the extensor branches of the suspensory ligament? One of the things that when we started using synthetic surfaces in flat racing is that we found that we had a lot more issues with suspensories behind. Where are you at, Ian? Is that the same thing up there? You guys found that?
Well, we didn't have, we got no synthetics, so.
Oh, that's right.
I never went through that.
Oh, okay.
I heard about it out west, for sure.
Yeah, well, we've had, you know, when we have these, and one of the things that I want you to be aware of is that these extensor branches of the suspensory ligament come and join right in with this main extensor tendon. So when we have a lack of slide, when the horses hit the ground and they're going fast, these guys are clipping along, you know, close to 40 miles an hour, and they need to slide a bit, and that just like you said, I'm sorry I can't remember the name. Wade. Well, like Wade said earlier, is that that force has got to go somewhere, and how force is dissipated is by movement a lot of times. So not only the movement of the hoof, movement of the bone within the hoof, but also, you know, as the hoof slides across the racing surface. And so it depends who you talk to on how much feet should slide, but I can tell you that when we look at feet that we filmed in high speed on dirt and filmed them on high speed in synthetic, the synthetic clearly shortens that slide phase of the stride. So, and what happens is we have the same amount of weight, the same velocity, and it's not sliding, so something else has to take it up. So it takes it up by as this guy goes. Bill Kazar is the one that kind of first talked about the snowplow effect here, right? And how this foot kind of binds up. But what happens is, as that pasture loads, which I can't push this guy down very far, but as this pasture loads, this foot flexes, the coffin joint flexes like this. So a lot of times, maybe I can just show it easier. So as this guy, you know, he goes out and extends his leg and then retracts his leg down to the ground, hits the ground, either heel first or flat foot, and it slides. What happens is, if it's not sliding because of the coefficient of friction of that particular surface is not high or is too high, then the foot just goes like that, and the toe digs in. The more the toe digs in, remember now that this deep flexor tendon is attached with a chuck ligament, and as the fetlock loads, the tension on the tendons become tight, and as that tension on the coffin bone, which ends up, the deep flexor tendon inserts on the coffin bone right there, so it's wanting to pull down, and as the toe presents more and more surface area to the ground, it provides more and more of a snow plow, which causes this to go more and more like that, right? Does that make sense? So we've got pictures of horses that are galloping. I mean, I wouldn't say they're breezing, but they're galloping, and they're up at mid-stance, where the fetlock is lowest to the ground. I've got several pictures of horses with their dorsal wall at 90 degrees. And so what I'm saying is, as we do that, we can understand that these extensor branches of the suspensory ligament now are not only is the suspensory ligament tight because of the cord that wraps around here gets tight. You guys with me? Wrap the cord around there, that gets tight. But now this gets tight, and this flexes, and that pulls these
just like a club-footed horse, right? He's got real prominent extension branches. So that's going on, so we've got an additional pull, and I'm just wondering if that doesn't relate to these high suspensories behind on the synthetic. Don't know. But one thing I can tell you is if you know your anatomy, you can at least make some headway. You can at least think of something other than fairy tales. You can at least kind of think, well, that happens and that happens. So we'll talk about this today as far as the mechanics of the suspensory apparatus and kind of show you all that. That's just one. You guys get that? What we're saying? Does that make sense? How do you hold up? Hang it. All right, let's take the lateral extensor tendon off. Got it? The lateral extensor tendon comes from the lateral extensor muscle. Let's kind of get all these guys out here in this leg. We'll clean up pretty good. It does not have a check ligament with it. It goes again over the fetlock joint and inserts onto the top outside aspect of P1.
What in the scenario where you say what is the point on the suspensor ligament of the greatest force? Which part of it would have the greatest force?
I don't know. I do know. Remember I was talking to you about Dr. Rooney earlier? He was a veterinary pathologist. He would tell me that the majority of the suspensory lesions that he would find in Lexington area when he was post-mortem horses in Lexington would be on the branches, on the medial or lateral branch. Now, I bet you that changes from discipline, maybe from discipline and maybe from environment. And I don't know what the most popular, you could ask your veterinarian when he does ultrasounds, where's the area of the suspensory ligament that he finds the most lesions? I think probably they'll tell you.
Do you suppose that's because of mass or force?
What's that?
The injuries to the branches. Do you think it's because there's less mass or more force?
I think we take a ligament and we half its fibers and we send one half one way and we send one half the other way, and I think the variation in terrain probably pulls on one probably more than the other. I think there's half the thickness there. That's what I'd say. I don't know. But that'd be a good question to ask the veterinarian. Where does he see the lesions? Does he see them different on a barrel horse versus an endurance horse or roving horse or something? I don't know. I bet there would be a difference though. So we got our extensor tendons cleaned off. Let's clean off some of this blood over here, okay? There we go. Get some of this off here.
Are these Kentucky cadavers or Texas?
No, these are Texas cadavers.
By the way, Kentucky.
You know what else is funny?
By the way, Kentucky.
What's that?
I think I worked at it yesterday.
Yeah.
I was in Denmark earlier this year, and the guy took me outside to show me what we were going to dissect the next day. And his daughter was holding this big 18-hand warm blood. He said, what do you want? And I said, well, it's kind of up to you, but we'll take the front behind. They said, all right, we go back in, and he put the old horse down, and I'm out there harvesting legs, fresh horse is still beating. Okay, real quick, hold up. You want to sit down? You want coffee? Good man. Good job with this boy. So what I'm going to do is, this is the digital neurovascular bundle. We got to get that out of there, right? You guys know what makes the horse vascular system different than most other animals or quadrupeds. Anybody know? Something really different in the...
They can't puke?
No, in the vascular. In the vascular system. I don't even know if that's true or not. You say horses can't puke. Come on. What's all that stuff that runs down my back and crap in my butt? In the summertime when they've been in clover.
around. That's our digital neurovascular bundle. So what makes the blood supply of a horse different is that you guys know the difference between veins, arteries, and nerves, right? Where? There it is. Yeah. You guys know the difference between veins, arteries, and nerves. So arteries, you know, are made up of smooth muscle. They're muscular. The walls are very thick and stout. They can open up and close down. The lumen of an artery can have more or less area in it, can let more or less blood through. And we know that veins are just kind of flaccid, and they have these one-way valves in them, right? So one of the things that the valves keep blood from running backwards, right? You guys all knew that, right? So one of the things that the horse has is from about mid-pasture down, there's no valves in the veins. So what does that mean? That means that means it allows blood to slosh around and move around as needed, depending on if he's here or whatever, right? So that blood can move around as needed. It's not going to have to go against the grain. So therefore, blood in the foot has nutritive function to give nutrients to all the tissues, and also has a mechanical function to be part of that, what Dr. Butler told us in his textbook years ago, and that's the hydrostatic cushioning effect of the foot. So it's filled with fluid. As this guy comes down and loads, right, he loads his pastern, it crimps it. Well, first of all, right, as he's running like this, a couple things are happening. He's throwing a lot of blood in that foot, right, filled with blood. I think somebody measured that at one time. There was a lot of blood pressure there. Hits the ground. What's the first thing that happens when he hits the ground is that not the tendons tight, the joints don't move yet. The first thing that happens is the bone moves in against the hoof wall. So that's the first thing that goes, and then the joints, and then the tendons and ligaments start loading. So as he hits the ground, all of that bone is trapped in that foot. So we've got all of that blood is trapped in that foot. So that gives us that thing that's filled up with fluid, and it's a lot more, it's a lot more protected. Okay, does that make sense? So that's the hydrostatic cushioning effect of the blood. So in the foot, the blood has two functions: to be nutrition based and also to give some mechanical stability and support. All right, let's see what we got here. So, okay, so we've got these tendons here, and they're held in place by this structure here. This is the flexor retinacula. And it's an annular ligament, so it's not a structural ligament. The characteristics of non-structural ligaments are they're really wide and thin, right? And they strap over things and keep things tight up against the bone. If this guy gets out of position, there's so much stress and strain on these tendons here that they lose their strength. So it's important to keep them in place. So I'll get that guy opened up a little bit. I'm going to take my superficial flexor tendon, if you'll hold that guy. There you go. Cut through the tendon sheath there. These tendons don't feel like they're abused too bad. I mean, they don't feel like they're hardened up or anything else. So just fairly normal feeling tendons. Cutting down through the tendon sheath. And as this guy, as he comes down, I'm going to try to open up another annular ligament here that wraps from the superficial flexor tendon down around the deflexor tendon. You guys see okay? Taking again some of this is the distal digital annular ligament that I got a hold of here. that's actually attached to the deep flexor tendon. Get him skin back a little bit to see what's going on in the pattern. Okay. Now you can see we've got the distal tendon sheath opened up down here. You see down here, and we've got the deep flexor tendon running down. And we've got a lot of, looks like a lot of injury down here to this tendon.
What do you think killed him?
Oh man, I don't know. Okay, so you can see there's an annular ligament here, right? And this guy goes around here. So it goes from sesamoid bone to sesamoid bone. You see, here's the sesamoid bones right here. One there and one there. So it goes from sesamoid bone to sesamoid bone. So it's a true annular ligament. And I'm telling you that for a reason, because we get down here distally, they're not true annular ligaments. So this is called the volar annular ligament. That holds those tendons close to the fetlock. So one of the things that the horse has that other animals, other quadrupeds don't have. Well, there's a lot of things that are unique about the horse. The laminar bed. What makes the laminar bed unique when the horse and for cows and pigs and goats and sheep and giraffes and everything else? What makes the laminar bed different? Come on, you guys know this. Secondary. GAWCF certified yet? Sorry, girlfriend, they can't do that with me. So we know that the hoof wall, inside the hoof wall, has laminar leaves, right? Every animal has, including humans, right? These insensitive laminar leaves, right? You can see them in here. You guys with me? All right. So and then they interdigitate with the sensitive laminar leaves, right there. So that they dovetail together. Well, that's how all other animals are put. All other hoofed ungulates. Horses, cows, sheep, goats, all those ungulates are put together, including humans. We have laminar leaves inside our fingernail, but the difference is the horse has on each primary laminar leaf, it has dozens of secondary laminar leaves, right? You guys remember looking at pictures, you know, of what Chris Pollitt has and stuff. So all these secondary laminar leaves increase the surface area from having just primary laminar leaves from 8 square inches. So if we measure the square inches around the parietal surface of the coffin bone, it's about 8 square inches on a normal foot, right? That increases to 8 square feet when we have these smaller secondary laminar leaves. So we've got huge amount of ability to support the coffin bone next to the inside of the hoof wall. So what was I talking about? What was I mentioning there? Oh, specialty adaptations for locomotion that the horse has that other animals don't have. Another one is, look at these. Another one is these really highly developed sesamoid bones. So the sesamoid bones in a horse are way bigger than the sesamoid bones of a cow, right? Or a moose, or another large quadruped. What that does is it causes these tendons, changes the angle of attack of these tendons and the suspensory ligament. And what it does is it moves it farther away from the fulcrum. It moves that fulcrum farther away, right? So anytime we can get something, change the angle of attack, a rope that's going through from here to here, right? It makes that particular system the weight it needs to be able to handle, it can handle more weight. Not just we're increasing the lever. So all we're doing is taking the center of rotation of that joint, moving the fulcrum out. The farther that fulcrum goes out, the stronger the cable is it holds it together. Does that make sense? You guys with me? So that's the design of this, these sesamoid bones, and that's another thing that makes this guy unique. Alright, so we've got our deep flexor tendon. I'm going to cut through. Let me get this guy kind of cleaned out a bit. So So what I'm doing is I'm removing the abaxial pastern ligaments, just kind of exposing the suspension apparatus a lot.
As farriers, we can have an effect on the insertion points, the dynamics between insertions of the tendons, but is there anything that we need to be aware of with the origin? Is there any kind of effect or strain that we can cause on the origin easily tendons?
Well, these guys are kind of unique because the origin of every tendon is the muscle, right? And so the deep flexor muscle actually has 3 heads. It has a radial head, a humeral head, and an ulnar head. So it's 3 muscles that come together that form an aponeurosis to form the tendon, and then as they go through the carpal canal, it has a check ligament. So we can affect. I don't think we can affect too much the origin so much as we can affect the check ligament more than the origin of those 3 muscles, right? So if we look at here now, we kind of go here. There's another ligament an annular ligament that's going across here to hold this deep flexor tendon in place. So we're going to take this proximal digital annular ligament out. There's one. Connie?
Yep.
Are you wanting to, we're going to have Ian do a PowerPoint before lunch, right?
Yeah, that was the plan, if we had time for it.
No, we have time.
Yes, keep going.
I want to hear it. Okay, so I'm taking that annular ligament off, and you can see, I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but how the superficial flexor tendon. So as this superficial flexor tendon comes down, and remember, it inserts, this is important because we're going to talk about, you guys, the suspensory apparatus. So what's your name there with the handmade shoes shirt on? Paul?
Yeah.
So Paul's been asking some pretty good questions, and so it's important that, I don't think, the knowledge of anatomy is great, and of whole anatomy, but we really do need to know the anatomy and the function of the distal limb. Right, so we need to know what happens when we take a straight hoof pastern axis and we raise it or lower it. Right, so what happens to our upright feet after we get them shod, we get them trimmed up, we get them the hoof pastern angle lined up, right, good. We send them out and they've got a straight hoof pastern axis and this is an upright or a low grade club type foot. What's going to happen in 6 weeks? How's that foot going to grow? And where are we going to trim more foot off? Yeah, we're going to end up nipping more heel off, aren't we? Right? And being a little careful because we don't want to over trim it and make him, be sore. But then we have this longer pastern horse, and we come back in 6 weeks. Where are we going to trim foot off him? Off the front half of the foot, right? So what I'm saying is that we have an influence on that, on this whole suspension apparatus. And as the horse stands, and he grows more heel, then he'll grow into a broken forward hoof pastern axis. If he grows and wears more heel and grows more toe, he'll grow into a broken back hoof pastern axis, right? So how does that affect the deep flexor tendon, its check ligament, the superficial flexor tendon, its check ligament, and the suspensory ligament? So that's kind of what I'd like to make sure that we understand. The first rule we got to understand is that is the relationship of the hoof to the pastern. So if we get this hoof, let's say it's a straight hoof pastern axis, right? Hoof pastern axis is straight, and we put a wedge pad on it, let's say, and we wedge him up. How is that going to affect, if we increase the angle of the hoof, how is that going to affect the angle of the pastern? It's going to drop the pastern, right? So we know that it's got an inverse relationship. Now, the important thing to know is as this pastern drops, which we can't, it's hard to, let me see this. What I'm trying to show you guys is that when this pastern drops, because the cannon bone has to stay perpendicular, it causes more angulation in the fetlock, right? So maybe what I should do is this.
I'm gonna have to get a close. There we go, how about this?
So maybe this will make sense. So I've got my foot here, right? And let's say this is the deep flexor tendon, right? Now we know that that the deep flexor tendon inserts on the bottom of the coffin bone like that. You guys are all good with that. So as this guy comes down, every bit that this fetlock changes angle, the coffin joint changes angle, right? So that's the reason that the deep flexor tendon doesn't get in maximum tension or doesn't get too tight at mid stance. When the deep flexor tendon is tightest is when? Right here, right? Right as that foot, before he starts, the heels come off the ground, starts to break over, right? And that's because of where it inserts. So the superficial flexor tendon inserting right here. Let me show this guy. So superficial flexor tendon that inserts there and there, right here on the top of the pastern bone. So here's the deep flexor tendon. It's the superficial flexor tendon as it's inserting medially and laterally on the pastern bone. So it has nothing to do with the coffin joint. Right? So it has a direct correlation to the position of the fetlock, right? So now we take a look and we take this other joint out of here, right? And we just have one joint. You see how that gets tight there? Right? So it's just a 1-to-1 ratio pretty much. Every bit that fetlock comes down, the superficial flexor tendon gets tighter. Everybody cool with that? And the other structure that goes hand in hand with that is the suspensory ligament. So the suspensory ligament and the superficial flexor tendon become under tension and away from, or become tight and loose together. They're a pair. Because they don't have anything to do with the coffin joint. So the suspensory ligament doesn't have anything to do with the coffin joint, does it? It ends right here at the, well, no, I take that back. It does have something to do with the coffin joint, doesn't it? The extensor branches do. So when it's like that, because these come around the front, it adds additional pressure to it. But basically, superficial flexor tendon and the main body of the suspensory ligament get tight and loose on the position of the fetlock joint. The angulation of the fetlock joint. So here's my cannon bone here and the fetlock joint, right? So if I go down a little bit, it gets a little tighter. If I go down a little bit more, it gets a little bit tighter. But the deep flexor tendon, on the other hand, remember, every bit that the fetlock drops, the coffin joint flexes. So if we take a look at a graph of the tension on the deep flexor tendon, so, right? So let's say, well, here's your graph here. Right, you know your basic XY axis here. You guys with me? Right, the XY axis here. So as the tendon hits the ground, it gets tight. The deep flexor tendon goes like this, and then all of a sudden, when they break over, the tension on the tendon goes like that. They break off the ground and it comes down. You guys with me? My imaginary chalkboard.
Yep.
You with me, Wade?
Yeah.
So in the superficial flexor tendon, if this guy's going like this, superficial flexor tendon is going like this. Right? So it gets tight immediately because the fetlock joint bends. Right? And it doesn't have anything to do with what's going on with the coffin joint. And that has to do with the deep flexor. You guys good on that? All right, boss. Let's see where we're at. Can you guys see okay? Down there? Let's see. All right, you got it right there? So I'm going to go ahead and cut the superficial flexor tendon off of its insertion on basically the top palmar fibrocartilage of P2. There's one branch. And there's the other branch. So this is the superficial flexor tendon. We don't see its check ligament. Its check ligament is up here, and it's above the knee, so we call it the superior check ligament or the radial check ligament on the front leg. On the hind leg, remember there is no check ligament for the superficial flexor tendon because it attaches to the calcaneus. It inserts there at the hock, on the point of the hock. Okay? So the difference between front legs and hind legs. As it comes down, it divides about mid-pastern, inserts on the very top of P2, and some people think there are some fibers that go to the bottom of P1. This little thing here goes around the superficial flexor tendon, encapsulates the deep flexor tendon in a little sheath there. That's called the manica flexor. It's not important. Now we've got our deep flexor tendon. Let me get this guy cleaned up a bit.
When you said top of P2, or is it dorsal or is it collateral? Like is it right on the sides or more towards the front?
No, the superficial flexor tendon breaks off into two branches.
Yeah.
And sends one branch medially, but both of them are on the palmar aspect of the leg. So it's a palmar proximal aspect of P2 on the medial side and on the lateral side. So I'm taking off what's left of my flexor retinacula on that side. How you guys hold up?
Good.
Turn it a little bit. There you go. Clean up this side a little bit. So, we hold him this way. Bill, did you bring your barrel horse today?
Oh, I guess I took it all over the road horses.
I don't know if you guys know, I invited Bill, my buddy. He just lives down the road in Flower Mound. Do you know Bill Kesner? He's left him now. He's a cat. He had a pretty famous horse a few years ago called Street Sense. Anybody hear of him?
Super safe.
What about Street Sense?
No, that wasn't.
That wasn't you?
Street Sense was the dolphin.
God dang it, Bill. You just punch me in the face, man. How long ago was it since you won the Derby?
Pardon?
How long ago was it since you won the Derby?
2009.
2009. So you won, and your horse's name that won the Derby?
Super safe.
Super Saver. And where's he now?
He's standing stud at Windstar.
At Windstar.
Yeah, he's making a stand.
Good. That's why I got stuck on that. I'm sorry. That was great.
It's supposed to begin with S.
Yeah. And it was 2009.
Yeah.
It was really cool that you guys to really have that personal friend that won the Derby. So good on you. Good on you, Bill. So, he brings his horses up here, ropes a little bit now and then. But anyway, so what we've got, you guys, is this deep flexor tendon that has this fairly developed accessory ligament with it. And it's called the check ligament. I just get a little bit more blood vessels out of there. So this is the inferior check ligament here. We can see what's going on is this guy originates from the bottom row of carpal bones. And underneath him is the suspensory ligament, okay? This is coming from the bottom row of carpal bone. But as this guy puts his foot down and loads his leg, the deep flexor tendon and its check ligament, which is every bit as much as 50% of the mass of the parent tendon, is attached there. And as the tension comes down on this guy, this superficial or this inferior check ligament is pulling back and down, which helps to keep the knee locked, which helps to prevent any knee buckling if the horse undergoes any kind of muscle fatigue. So this guy's pulling back on the bottom of the knee. Up here above the knee, we've got another check ligament that's from the superficial flexor tendon that's also anchoring and pulling back on the knee, and that's one of the ways that the horse can relax a little bit, just applying weight to the leg and pulling back on the knee and helping that knee stay in a locked position. It's really detrimental if knees buckle over when they're weighted. So this is our deep flexor tendon as it runs all the way down into the foot. And it goes over the sesamoid bones. And one of the interesting things is that we've got a researcher in Japan who works for the Japanese Racing Association, and he's done some research on what's going on with the muscles. So what he did basically was he stuck a little acupuncture needle in the deep flexor muscles, in the superficial flexor muscles, and the extensor muscles. And what he found was, and all it does is register electric activity. So when the muscles are firing, we got a lot of, movement in the machine, and then when the muscles are flaccid, they're kind of flat. So his name is Sammy Aoki. If anybody knows Dr. Aoki, he's been over here many times giving a lot of talks. He's actually quite sick right now with diabetes, and so he probably won't make it back to the States. But he's done a lot of good work over the years. And what he did was, when he put these two needles in the flexor muscles and two needles in the extensor muscles, what he found was this. As the horse goes through his phases of stride, and he lifts his leg off the ground and he flexes his lower leg, and all the muscles on the top proximal aspect of the limb protract the leg forward. We have this little, this little extension right there. And at this stage, by the way, the joints and the bones are open. They're not in a good position to hit the ground, so they're stretched open. So as this guy loads his leg, a couple things are happening. He's contracting the deep flexor, superficial flexor muscles and the extensor muscles. So during this retraction phase of the stride, the activity of the flexor muscles are greatest. As soon as it hits the ground, as soon as this guy hits the ground and loads, the electric activity of the flexor muscles goes like this. It's very, very flat, very flat. And so pointing out that the point is that when he loads, instead of these guys being loaded on the muscles, instead of the muscles holding on to him, we've got these check ligaments. That's the inferior and superior check ligament. So at mid-stance, so he hits the ground, he slides, then he loads his leg, and he's at mid-stance. At mid-stance, the muscles are at their least active time. That's unusual. Doesn't that interest you? Isn't that unusual to you guys? So what's happening is the muscles aren't holding the leg up. The check ligament here. So say I've got a dumbbell, right? And I'm doing curls, and after a while, it's all on my bicep, right? And so after a while, I can't hold up anymore. But if I was to take and wrap a little check ligament around here, right? Load me up. Anybody here been taken by the guy who can pick up the anvil with one hand by the horn? You ever done that? Yeah, you old guys done that. You take a rope, you tie it around here, you tie it to your arm, and you bet somebody can pick up a 100-pound animal by the horn and carry it around. You just rope up to your arm and just basically pick it up with your arm and hold it with your hand. Go collect your money. So that's what check ligaments are doing. At that point in the stride, when he's at mid-stance, the muscles, the flexor muscles, are not very active. And so people have calculated how much
how much muscle are we gonna need to be able to hold that fetlock up. They've calculated that those flexion muscles would have to be 4 times as big. Think of how that would affect the locomotion characteristics of the horse if you was to have Arnold Schwarzenegger muscles up there on his floor, right? He wouldn't be as fast and as, wouldn't have the movement qualities that we want out of horses. So it's really interesting that these check ligaments help to make the whole system more, help make the whole system just more efficient. Energy saving, right? For animals, in order to get energy, they got to put themselves out there and expose themselves. For a horse, you got to put his head down and eat. So energy comes at a cost. Move his thumbs. Ready to go. Over this one. Ready to go. I'm going to take the check ligament off. Okay. Now, if you'll pull that leg forward. There you go. As we go through here, now we're kind of going into the foot. And what if I was to take this, just do these last distal sesamoidian ligaments, and then break and let you have your product. How's that? What time is it?
10:40.
Does that work for you?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Then we can finish the foot after that. How's that?
I just want to break in. There was somebody here that sent me a text, or Danielle that works for Racer. There's a girl that lost a shoe out there, and she was looking, would there be any horseshoers here that could put on the shoe? Does anyone have the toolbox handy that can help somebody out there?
No, we don't have any tools around. It's so old for the old guys. It's funny. It's not how many horses we shoe a day anymore. It's how many horses we get out of shoeing.
That's for young guys, too.
Hey, how about a round of applause for my helper, guys? Let's show them the distal sesamoidian ligaments. And I'm sorry, the suspensory ligament. Okay. So we take our suspensory ligament, which is up here in between the 2 split bones. Now, you guys talk to me about this suspensory ligament. What do you know about it?
It originates from the distal row of carpals and optimal palm or canal.
It originates from, originates from the lateral carpal bones, this whole plate here, cartilaginous plate, the medial sesamoid bone, the cannon bone, and the lateral sesamoid bone. So here's something I want you guys to think about. I'm always intrigued by clubfoot. I just don't have these clubfoot's feet figured out. I don't know anybody that does. Well, if you do know, I'd sure like to know. But I just don't know why these gelding thoroughbreds about, I don't know, Bill, how many of them? 25% at least by the time they get to the urine cells is going to have normal feet. One foot's going to get clubby.
That's probably accurate.
I've never figured it out. It could be a lot of things. It could be acquired. It could be little wing fractures in the coffin bone. There's a lot of theories that I think probably all have a little bit. But I've often, when I do these dissections, I follow the deep flexor muscle up. There is one muscle that's called the ulnar head of the deep flexor muscle that's never a muscle. It's always a tendon. And it goes all the way up to the point of the elbow. And it makes me wonder if with those 3 heads, and that one in particular goes all the way to the elbow, if that one muscle that's actually a tendon, it isn't having something to do with the flexural problems that begin with clubfoot. So I don't know, but I know that we've got this unusual structure here, and not only does this suspensory ligament originate at the cannon bone, but it also originates at the split bone. Remember that these split bones, you guys, up until the age of 5, 6, 7 years old, are not ossified to the cannon bone. So they're still attached through ligaments. And that bone is not really, doesn't have a bottom to it. So it's attached with ligaments, but what's also attached to it is this suspensory ligament. So, what makes this guy unusual is that it's also called the interosseous muscle, right? And this particular ligament has unusual characteristics because it has a lot of muscle fiber in it. I see quite a difference in the amount of muscle fiber in a thoroughbred, by the way, and in a quarter horse, you guys.
What's the difference?
There's a lot more muscle fiber in a thoroughbred that stays there longer as the horse gets mature. So I'm just going to cut it right here. You feel it go? You feel our foot drop? Got it? So as we come down, it divides or bifurcates below the nodules of the lymph nodes, guys. So, and the reason that they say that is when you're palpating this leg to try to check if the horse has got hot suspensory ligament, or if it's a deep flexor tendon or a superficial flexor tendon. You know, we flex them and we palpate them. The landmarks, what I'll teach my students is the landmarks here are the nodules of the splint bones, and then below that are not the main body, but you're feeling each branch, each individual medial and lateral branch of that. So here's the main body of the suspensory ligament. These are the medial and lateral branches, and also these are the extension branches. So as this guy loads, look what happens to the length there of that space there. So as he dorsiflexes, that fetlock loads. Right? There gets to be more and more tension on that. Well, not only that, but as this guy does this, these guys get more and more tension, and as that coffin drum, which I'm having a hard time flexing, goes forward. Can you see how that goes forward? These get tighter yet? And I think that has a little bit to do with some of these suspensories we see in our racehorses, personally. So as this guy comes down, it goes ahead and inserts on the very top of the sesamoid bones. Each branch inserts onto the top of one sesamoid bone. And what we've got here, this is just the fiber cartilage that's on the outside of the two sesamoid bones. These are our sesamoid bones right here. Right there. Yeah. And this ligament right here just holds those two together, the intersesamoid ligament right there. Now, we go forward, this big ligament here, which I kind of like to think of as an extension of this main body of the suspensory ligament, is what? Who knows what that ligament is there? It goes from the bottom of see all that fibrocartilage here? One of the definitions of a sesamoid bone is a small cuboidal bone encased in cartilage. Right? And so there's all cartilage here. And this guy right here, which is this straight or superficial sesamoidian ligament, we have problems with it all the time. Mostly not up here, mostly down where it inserts, by the way. Okay, so a lot of times where it inserts, it's the only of the distal sesamoidian ligaments that goes over the pastern joint. And here's the pastern joint right there. Right, there's the pastern joint. So it goes over the pastern joint and inserts onto this palmar fibrocartilage on the very top back or palmar aspect of P2. Okay? So when this guy is starting to break over, it has a little bit different dynamic than the main body of the suspensory ligament. Because since it's anchored down here, as this guy breaks over, this guy it continues to stay tight, where this main body doesn't stay so tight. Does that make sense? Okay? Alright, you got it? So I'm gonna take this suspensory ligament. Maybe we can see. how much muscle fiber is in here. Here you guys, check this out. So here's the suspensory ligament. That's all the muscle fiber, all the way down. Now, I don't know how old this horse was. He's not a young one. So there's these muscle fibers in here. One of the things we've got to be careful of is when we take an ultrasound, these areas look like pools of blood, but they're muscles. Right? So there's a difference between a torn and strained suspension or bleeding inside and just normal suspension ligaments that might have a little more muscle than others. Does that make sense?
Muscle fibers functional.
Well, we don't know, Bill. No one has ever figured out what nerve innervates and if they have contractile force. No one's ever done the work. We don't know. I personally think they have to. They have to have something. Because I don't know if you guys see this, a lot of horses that get suspension restraints, they're very guarded, aren't they? Very guarded. So I think not only does the flexor muscles help, but I think these kind of help as well. Because this guy has a tendency to get really hard and fibrous, doesn't he? If it's a chronic suspensory problem. So there's those muscle fibers in there. It's unusual. It's the only ligament in the leg that I know that has muscle fibers. I think it adds to the stretching ability of the ligament for sure. I just don't know how much contractile ability it has. So, no, that might be a good little project for the fellowship test. Okay, so there's the suspensory ligament, and now we've got your straight sesamoid right here. Notice it's attaching to from the cartilage plate on the bottom of the two sesamoid bones, and it goes in between the middle sesamoid or the oblique sesamoid.
Do muscle fibers have different types of nerves than, say, like a tendon, in order for them to contract?
No, it's skeletal muscle. They would all be skeletal. There's different muscles. There's smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, skeletal muscle, and this would be skeletal muscle.
But is there a specific kind of, is there different kinds of nerves? Like, for example, would they be able to look at that muscle and see if there's active nerves firing in the same way that a muscle would?
I don't know how they would do that. I don't know. I'm sure they would have a way of doing that, and I don't know if it would be by looking at it, or they would have to hook it up to some electric impulse and see if it actually contracted.
And that would be able to tell you if it was an active muscle similar to the way, the deep pressure muscle would work.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what to do with some guy smarter than me to get that figured out. This guy's interesting because he has a little pathology down here on its insertion here. You can feel it's really hard and fibrous as well. So what we've got here is we've taken the suspensory ligament and the main, or the straight distal sesamoid ligament from here down. And what we've got is, if you guys want to come up, this is the last thing I'm going to do, and we'll take a break. While Ian's doing his talk, I'm going to kind of prep this foot a little bit. But you kind of want to look up in here and kind of see into the coffin joint and see the reverser. So you ready to pull that down like that? Got it? So notice that, okay, so this is P1, and here's the middle sesamoid ligament that comes from one branch and another there, and inserts right on P1. Remember, the superficial is the only one that goes from the bottom of the sesamoid bones all the way down to P2, right? So we pull in here, open this guy up, we can see that we're starting to get into now I just cut into the navicular bursa, and we can see the navicular bone here. So this is the flexural surface of the navicular bone.